This is Uncle Russ. It's been a long time, several months since I have been here on YouTube. This is Uncle Russ of Uncle Russ's Comic Talk. We're relaunching a new format here. We're not just going to be talking about comic books, although that's the subject for today, but we'll be talking in the future about a lot of different subjects, not just comics, but music. I'll be exposing you to some of the unusual music that I enjoy. Hopefully, not just to offend you, but to broaden your horizons. Also, we'll be talking about films, television, a little bit of a crossover between films and comic books with today's subjects. And I'd like to talk about marketing, Marvel comic books. Uh, I've always wondered, as a lifelong comic book fan, why do the television or film versions of our beloved characters become so much more popular in popular culture? Why do they become, in most people's imagination, the definitive version? We like to nitpick about how they changed the comic book origin. But for most people, comic books are not a user-friendly way to begin. A lot of people that watch the Marvel Cinematic Universe do not read the Marvel comic books. And I think there's reasons why. And I'd like to give an example of this. Uh, got two books here. I've got first of all, we've got Sinister War, which was a miniseries featuring Spider-Man and the Return of the Sinister Six, simultaneously with the ongoing title collected here in trade paperback form. We've got the current Nick Spencer run of The Amazing Spider-Man, Volume 15. These books are sold separately. There is no indicated crossover between the two. Now, in the early years of Marvel, say if you were a hardcore Daredevil fan, well, every year or so, they would have a story that would cross over with Captain America or Spider-Man or the Fantastic Four. So that if you were a kid back in the 60s or 70s when that happened, you would buy an extra comic book that month that maybe you didn't regularly buy. It's good marketing, and it's a good way to push your uh, titles that are selling a little bit less. However, now the level of crossovers between titles and the level of crossovers between events is ridiculous and confusing. Here's a good example of why your non-hardcore comics fan has no interest in going to the comic book shop and trying to follow Spider-Man. This is a 9-part story. If you want to read it in chronological order without any spoilers, well, then you start with this book, Part 1, The Amazing Spider-Man issue number 70. And then Part 2 is in Sinister War, issue number 1. And then Part 3 is back over here in The Amazing Spider-Man, volume 71. Part 4, back over here in Sinister War, followed by Part 5. Well, is Part 6 next? No, Part 6 is back over here. The Amazing Spider-Man, number 72. Back over here, Sinister War, number 4 is Part 7. Back over here, The Amazing Spider-Man, number 73, Part 8. And an epilogue from issue number 74. We have great writing by Nick Spencer here, and we have really good artwork by a number of good artists. But how can even a well-informed comic reader, and by well-informed meaning I go to the work of getting this information not from Marvel, but from other fans who post videos on YouTube. It's ridiculous to think that anybody would think this is a good way to market comics. Uh, I tell you what's a better way. Back in the 90s, when Superman was relaunched and very, very hot, at one time there were four titles. There was The Adventures of Superman, there was Action Comics, there was Superman, and there was Superman, the Man of Steel. The stories continued from one week to the next amongst four different titles. How to keep it all straight, how to read in chronological order. Well, those are referred to as the triangle years because it was very, very simple. You had your issue number, the month, and then a little triangle that say that this is part one, two, three, four, whatever of this particular ongoing storyline. So as long as you were a sucker enough to buy a new comic book every single week to follow the story, there was no confusion. And it wasn't so bad to follow them back when they were about still 75 cents a copy. However, now with the average comic book being $3.99, and this is the way in which they're mapped out, I don't think Marvel is really going after the non-comic book reading audience. Uh, Comic books will never sell the way they sold in the 1940s. They're never going to sell in the millions and millions of copies again. Reading comic books is never going to be a part of the mainstream American culture that it was back in the newsstand and newsprint days. Now it's a specialized audience, a niche audience who are willing to pay big money to follow their characters and keep them in nice collections like this. All we would ask for from publishers like Marvel, who in general has excellent fan service, is please just give us a little bit more intelligent way to follow these extra storylines. There would have been nothing at all with combining these two into one book and selling it for the same price. I would have bought it anyway, and then I'd have one book to read instead of have to constantly go back and forth between two. That's Uncle Russ's rant opinion today about the world of comic books. And Uncle Russ talk shit. We will be talking shit. We're going to be talking smack. We're going to be laying down some things that you might like, laying down some things that you might not like. But let us know how you feel. Let us know if there's anything you'd like us to look into. I can promise in the future we're going to be dealing with more with comic books, mostly old comic books that were from the years before I was even born. Some of the best. We're going to be dealing with some underground music, grindcore, hardcore, punk, underground metal, bluegrass music, you name it. I love so many different genres of music, and we're going to be doing some unboxings in the future, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm willing to discuss anything. If you'd like me to take on a topic related to this or genre films, specifically within the science fiction, fantasy, horror, and exploitation genre, I really love those kind of movies. And looking very much forward to talking shit with you every week. This is Uncle Russ saying goodbye for now. Have a good week. Thank you.